Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us on channel 347. It's Mental Health Monday, where we chat about issues regarding our mental health. And back in studio, we'd like to welcome back in the hot seat, clinical psychologist, Brother Rafiq. Lockhat. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Thanks for joining us.
It's
the
always a
sessions
pleasure.
have been so informative that I've, started reading up on things that we've been talking about and that you were shedding light on, but more importantly, for my own benefit and just in my community, that people sometimes shy away from these type of topics, and especially the one that we covered last week, which was depression.
Right.
And Rafiq, you mentioned there were 7 types of depression. We covered a few. Do you want to recap and before we go ahead?
Yeah, so just to remind our viewers that we said depression is a serious illness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping between last week and this week, people have stopped using the word "I'm so depressed" all the time when they just mean I'm having a bad day, having a bad couple of days. And I suggest people start using words like I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm sad. I'm irritated, because those words are more reflective of what people are feeling.
Gotcha.
And I said last week, if you start using the word depressed all the time, then we devalue the word. We make it seem like an insignificant thing, because in 2 days you're better. Then people will say, oh, so depression's a quick thing. You can snap out of it. It's not. So hopefully our viewers have taken cognizance of the fact that let's use the word correct. So they were the different types. And we said depression is characterized seriously by a persistent, over 2 weeks, feelings of tearfulness, sadness, loss of appetite, either increased appetite, decreased appetite, sleep, increased sleep, decreased sleep, persistent mood, feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, then leading into feelings of worthlessness, and then going into feelings of suicide.
Right.
And you can either have an intent, I'm going to do it, versus it's just a thought. I'm just thinking of death. And those were the general things. And we said the most common one is the one called major depressive disorder.
Okay.
Right. That's the most common one. Then the other one you get is, the old term is a dysthymic disorder, where you've kind of been depressed on and off for 2 years consistently.
Sure.
And the feeling is that you're walking around carrying a 50 kg backpack, and everybody else has a 5 kilo backpack. So you're still doing the walk, but yours just feels heavier.
Yeah. But on that point as well, on that type of depression,
Right.
I mean, what's the physiological impact that would have? Will you? Okay.
Come to that later.
Okay.
We are going to cover that. And but that's where you just kind of like adjust to that. But it's not normal. You shouldn't be having a 50 kilo backpack.
Of course.
Then we spoke about the one that's less common, seasonal affective disorder, where it's just winter time, people become very depressed. We've had some of that starting now with this long winter
absolutely.
we've had.
Yeah.
Then the one that I didn't cover much on last week is postpartum depression.
Oh, yes.
Now, why is that important? It's important because, firstly, so these are women who get depressed after giving birth.
Yeah, commonly known as postnatal.
Postnatal,
Yeah,
right. The problem with that is that it causes a lot of problems. Because firstly, in that state of mind, now you can understand it's not caused by the person.
Yes.
It's a depression. And in that state, you lose interest in your baby.
Yeah.
Now imagine a brand new mother who just gave birth, but they've got this depression where they just don't have the energy. The baby's crying, irritates them. They don't feel like breastfeeding. If they are breastfeeding, I don't want this child. Now, if you take that small thing and let's extend it to family.
Absolutely.
Right. And then look, again, we're generalizing, but now the in-laws. Like, what kind of woman is this? They don't know her well.
Of course.
It's new to the family.
Yeah.
And we're back to what we said in our first session. If you don't understand depression, then you start labeling it incorrectly. So now you can see how that, if it's a new husband, I don't understand why you like this towards our baby. The mother feels even worse because she doesn't want to feel like this.
Yeah.
But it's just a feeling. So you lose interest in your baby. We'll talk about postpartum psychosis, which is even worse later on.
Right.
But in that state, it's not just you, like the mother and the baby. It's now the extended family involved who are wondering, what's up with this woman? How can she not? Did she not want the baby? Husband thinks, did you not want to get married? I asked you if you want a child. You said, and the woman who's suffering from the depression has no idea what's going on with her.
Yeah, and then starts putting up barriers for people questioning her, I would imagine.
Exactly. So the whole thing has a huge domino effect, and sometimes people don't understand, and they're not, obviously they're not understanding, which means they're not supportive. And so people leave that hospital from a joyous occasion, and sometimes it's just caused rifts that can't be fixed, unless, of course, the family, the doctor involved, or the gynecologist, obstetrician said, listen, this is what this woman is suffering from. It's not her. It's what she's doing right now. She will recover, but this is where we are.
Right.
Okay, so that's why that one's so important. Then
I know we've got, I think, about 3 or 4. I know we've got the psychological, obviously, part of depression. Depression is the cognitive.
Yeah, then there was psychotic depression.
Okay.
So where you get depressed, but you also have a psychosis, very serious.
Sure.
So you start hallucinating.
Wow.
Okay, so you see things that are not there. You hear voices that are not there. You start feeling things crawling on, very scary stuff, like tactile hallucinations, and you get delusions. So that's a depression, but with an added thing where you've lost touch with reality in addition to that.
Yeah, yeah.
Then we spoke about the manic depression, the delusions. And then there's one more that comes after this. I think we spoke about this one there. I said this one's controversial because it's for women who have the called premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So
I remember you mentioning that last week.
It's controversial because some people say, why are you labeling normal periods? But it's where it's involved. You become severely depressed, but a week or two before your depression. And again, no one can understand it.
Sure. So all of these that we're unpacking, all of these with the proper treatment, with the proper counseling, can be overcome.
Yes, and that we're going to cover in quite detail next week.
Okay.
So next week we go, fine, people are waiting for it. Say, where's the treatment? It's coming next week. First, it's the understanding of it.
Brilliant. And we've got people following from various parts of the world as well, which is great. And we ask people to give us their input, send us messages. You know, you can email me, lukman@hilaal.tv, or yourselves on your good social media platforms. And then we can cover some of the issues that our
people
viewers
want us to talk about.
Yeah. And then the last one I think you spoke about was the environmental part of depression as well.
That's the causes.
Oh, those are the causes.
Those are the causes. Looking at all the different causes. So there are lots of causes.
Okay.
There isn't one thing. So I'm going to put some slides on the screen, causes. So if you get psychological, you can see. So psychological, if we just break that down to make it simple, it's broken down into your personality type. So the type of personality you are can contribute to you becoming depressed.
Oh.
If you're highly strung, if you're overly perfectionistic, it's difficult when things go wrong. You can't, if things go, too many things go wrong at once, your personality can't really deal with that.
Right.
Where you try to control things all the time.
Sure.
And often in life, you can't control things all the time. You can try, but it's about when people have that over-control and they see the control slipping away.
We often hear the term OCD being passed around.
But OCD is a separate condition.
Okay.
Separate condition,
I thought
totally.
it would be tied to something like that.
No, separate condition.
Okay, interesting.
So that's a good one because there's the common misunderstanding again
There we go.
that OCD has to do with
Control issues.
control. It has, but it's far more complex.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Then you can look at pests. So people, you know, the half full, half empty person.
Yes.
If you see a glass, you immediately think, oh no, it's half empty. So if you have those kinds of personality traits, you're generally more prone to becoming depressed when things don't work out.
Sure.
Whereas an optimistic person generally tries to look for solutions.
Yeah.
Somebody who has a pessimistic personality tends to look for why it's going, the wrong stuff. So, I mean, yeah. Then how you think. Okay, so your cognitive patterns. So some people, what we call ANTs, A-N-T, automatic negative thinkers.
Okay.
They can't help it. Their brain's wired that way. Of course, there are treatments to change the wiring.
Right.
But when something doesn't work out, you immediately think that's the worst thing. So you wire into the worst possible outcome. And that, of course, gives you quite a big fright. And then, you know, if you think like that all the time, it's easy to become depressed. And then having unrealistic expectations about people, about life. not really in touch with the reality of situation. Your expectations are too high for things. And so when things don't work out, the dive down is quite hard. And that's when you hit that helpless, hopeless, and the worthless feeling. And so that's the kind of psychological factors.
Yeah. So very interesting that all of these types of forms of depression, psychological factors are, when it comes to depression, all of this can be treated. A lot of times people don't want to be labeled with a certain type of treatment, I would imagine. But we're going to cover that after the break and maybe chat a little bit about that. Remember to send us a WhatsApp if you'd like to send us a question, 079 085 2511, and we'll get back to you with regards to your questions. In studio, we have Brother Rafiq Lockhat, who's a clinical psychologist, talking about Mental Health Monday. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with our topic of today, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Thanks so much for watching us on Channel 347. It's Mental Health Monday. In studio, we have clinical psychologist Brother Rafiq Lockhat, who is giving us much needed advice surrounding various topics. And the topic that we're continuing from last week is depression. Brother Rafiq, thanks so much for coming into studio.
Always a
Before the
pleasure.
break, we chatted about some of the environmental conditions when it comes to depression, but also the 7 types of depression as well. And I think you've also brought a slide along which explains a little more about some of the lingo and causes
Sure.
that is used when it comes to depression.
Right. So before the break, we were on the psychological factors, and then like your thinking patterns, and then trauma. Trauma in South Africa is a big thing. So trauma covers many things. It covers things like sexual abuse. It covers things like physical abuse growing up. It covers things like loss of a loved one. Okay, so it's a really grief that one can't get over. There's normal grief, and then there's complicated grief.
Yeah.
And maybe in another show we'll cover the difference between, because that's the one thing all of us are going to have to deal with, the death of a loved one.
Of course. You know, talking about that, I had someone that went for grief counseling this weekend, and, you know, it was a family member that passed away over 5-6 years ago. And they never quite dealt with the death because life just happened. And she said for the first time since she really, really cried her heart out to express herself, because she felt that she didn't, you know, she wasn't in a good space to do that.
Right.
But I think with the proper counseling, with the proper direction, you are allowed to express how you feel.
Correct. So that's a big factor. Death of a loved one, serious illness can really cause you to become depressed as well. Hijackings, home invasion. So any kind of trauma can definitely contribute to you becoming depressed. Then we get chronic stress. Okay. So if you look at like financial, continuous financial pressure every month and whatever it is.
Of course.
Eventually it grinds you down and you do become depressed. And the depression, you slide to that helpless, hopeless, worthless. Those are the 3, it's called the evil cousins, if we use that name.
Gotcha.
The evil siblings. Once you get to that point, you pretty firmly depressed at that point. Helpless, hopeless, worthless. If you look at the screen, life changes. So people don't understand this, but also bullying, chronic bullying in school or at the workplace. So workplace bullying is a thing.
Yeah, it is. And it's ever changing because, look, a large amount of our community are still reeling from COVID, right? They sort of getting their life back on track, to a certain point. But at the same time, the work environment has become so competitive that people are trying to get ahead, not realizing that there could be a case for them bullying someone else in terms of getting ahead. Yeah. Do you find that happening?
It does happen. The thing is that workplace bullying is complicated because...
And it can be so subtle.
It's subtle, it can be overt, it can be subtle. Also, you can't just leave because you can't just walk into like another job anymore. So now you're stuck between bullying every day or hating going to work, but you need the income. And some people just like resign in anger and frustration, and then it causes separate problems because now there's no income. They can't meet the bond, the house is getting repossessed, cars getting repossessed, school fees. So financial, I spoke about, can be a huge contributing factor to getting depressed. And then, believe it or not, even positive changes, right, can cause extra stress. So getting a promotion, you might think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But with that comes extra responsibility, like you've got to fire people now.
Gotcha.
And then that becomes something, I don't want to fire people. I don't. So significant life-changing, changing cities, changing schools, moving countries, losing a spouse, changing your status, divorce, marriage. So just to say that even it's often confusing because so-called positive changes, people feel very stressed by it and they don't understand, but this is a good thing. Getting married is a big change. It's probably the biggest change that one can make in one's life, I suppose. And if you look at our table there, then medical conditions, very, very important. Okay, medical conditions, chronic. So I often see patients refer to me after a serious heart attack or a stroke.
Yeah.
So serious heart attack, there seems to be many people become depressed after a serious heart attack. And I think the reason for that is because their mortality suddenly hits them. And you suddenly realize that you could have died at any point.
Right.
And for some reason that really shocks people and they become depressed. You can come out of it in a good way because then you can make positive changes. But a stroke, for example, where you lose functions, not enough for you to lose, but just enough for you to lose your functioning can cause you to depress. Accidents where you're in a wheelchair suddenly, that can cause depression. So diabetes.
And that's quite prevalent.
It doesn't sound like a big thing, but for many people, diabetes is a huge lifestyle change.
Absolutely.
And people become very depressed because their lifestyle must change and they become angry. And then it's difficult to deal with that. Like why me cancer, for example. So all of those conditions, medical conditions can definitely make you feel overwhelmed and then you slide into the depression. So that's an important thing to talk about. And then there's things like societal factors.
Okay.
Societal factors, or is it social? Well, it's two. There's societal and social.
Okay.
They will come to substance abuse. Alcohol and drugs can worsen the depression because...
And some people use it as a crutch to...
Unfortunately, some people think they can self-medicate out of the depression by either taking excessive sleeping pills or excessive painkillers or then illicit drugs.
Right.
And it usually makes it worse because it's a chemical. Drugs are chemicals. They change. We'll talk about it next week around medication.
Okay.
So how is medication different to you taking cocaine?
Gotcha.
And if I'm going to take meds, why can't I take cocaine? Because they're very different.
Exactly.
So we will come
and
to
life
that.
altering at the same time.
And then social factors, isolation. When you get depressed, or sometimes you become depressed because you're isolated. Okay, we are generally social people.
We are, correct. And that's what I think a large amount of our communities were affected. I was chatting to a friend in Brazil when it came to COVID as well. They were such sociable, communities that they just got depressed when they had to now, be at home and isolate themselves and, things like that, a hard lockdown. It was really depressing for some. Some loved it, but some didn't. At the same time.
Some did, generally. So in general, that isolation, and then you become lonely, and then again you slide into a helpless, hopeless, worthlessness, and that's risky. So those are like the loneliness factors. And then there are other important things. I know we're like zipping through it today, but I wanted to just get this through so that we can talk about treatment next week. Relationships are... There's a joke in psychology that we see people in therapy because of the people who should be in therapy.
That is a very good joke. Do you find that a large amount of loved ones, say for example, a dad comes in to see you and he's been experiencing challenges and he wants to get help, but his loved ones, do you find that they are open to also coming to therapy sessions?
It's better now.
Okay.
I think shows like this and having Devon on, all the other, the new, it's much better now.
Mm-hmm.
People are more open to coming.
Good.
So whatever work we're doing to destigmatize, it's definitely working.
Right.
Okay? We are seeing the improvement. We are seeing more and more people coming for therapy, less shameful about it, and more people going for family therapy, saying, listen, can you help us as a family?
As a
we
family.
communicate really badly.
Do you have corporates coming in as well?
Corporates have their own internal wellness programs.
Okay.
So they usually have their own, what's it called, EAP, employee assistance programs.
Right.
And that they're generally quite good at that.
Okay.
We spoke last week, it was like productivity equals profits. So you need to keep people in tip-top mental shape.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I'm actually quite pleased that families are deciding to come to therapy as a whole to recover, you know, and get back to where they were. That's a different dynamic, though, because you know, the person comes in for help and then says, look, but I'm not the real problem. I have issues at home that I'd like them to hear what you say. And it's that almost taking sides part, or them wanting reassurance that they're not the fault or the issue.
Well, of course, the difference is that not everybody sees it that way.
Yeah.
So in a family, everybody will see things differently. And that's where you have to have like a skilled therapist to help navigate through that process.
Right.
Obviously, you can't take a side, but everybody will see the other person as a problem.
That's very interesting.
And that's where we come. So,
okay. Brother Rafiq, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Are we done again?
Yes, we've covered quite a bit.
Goodness.
So we're back next week. We'll unpack all these signs of depression and some of the treatments of how we could navigate through these as well, so that our community can benefit and not stigmatize something like depression. So thank you very much for coming in.
Always a pleasure.
So there we go, Mental Health Monday, back next week, inshallah. Do join us for another edition. But if you have any questions, send it through and we'll cover that next week in next week's session, 079 085 2511. We'll pose those questions through to Brother Rafiq and we'll cover that. Thanks for watching. We're back tomorrow between 5 and about 7 o'clock. We have the news and also Hilaal live from the Cape Town team. Sohail Barnes, Mohammed Parker and myself, Luqman Shadrack. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.